Welcome to Level Up, where you get the score on video games. If you remember from my Pokemon Stadium review, I mentioned that it was great to see every Pokemon at the time in 3D for the first time. In that sentence though, I made sure to mention every Pokemon, because there was a game that came out before Stadium that had part of the original 151 in 3D. That game would be Pokemon Snap. As odd as it sounds, it's a Pokemon photography game. But like I said, it was in 3D and also the first Pokemon game on a non-handheld console. Naturally, we all wanted it. How does this game hold up in hindsight? Let's find out as I review Pokemon Snap for the Nintendo 64 this week.
Hello there!
You play as a professional Pokemon photographer, you try saying it 10 times fast. Hired by Professor Oak to take pictures for a Pokemon report. For some reason though, Oak is only interested in the Pokemon found on this particular island, which excuses the game to only have around 63 of the original 151 Pokemon there were at the time. The professor gives you this vehicle to ride in called the 01, which follows a rail but can float in the air and over water. I don't know how it works. Anyways, this turns the game into a rail shooter, mind the pun, since you can't stop the 01, pick your direction, or change your speed until you beat the last level at least. However, this does not mean that the game is entirely uninteractive. Many times to get pictures of certain Pokemon, you'll have to make certain events happen by interacting with the Pokemon's environment. You're given 3 devices to achieve this: food, the Pester Ball, and a Pokeflute. Sometimes it can be rather obvious how to get some Pokemon, like playing the Pokeflute near Snorlax to get a distinguishable shot of him. Other times it's just experiment and see what happens, like for the Gyarados picture. Also, don't think you can get away with taking an off-centered picture of a single Charmander 10 yards away. Despite this game's otherwise simplistic nature, Professor Oak's rating system is somewhat sophisticated. He rates you based on what's going on in the picture, how big the Pokemon appears, if there are any additional Pokemon of the same species in the photo, and if it's centered or not. It's scientific yet artistic at the same time. Once you can see why he gives you certain scores, you can figure out how he's going to rate your picture. So, all in all, the gameplay is less boring than perceived by concept alone, but probably less fun than it could have been.
You were close!
Since this game is all about taking pictures of Pokemon, and that the big hype was it was the first 3D Pokemon game, the graphics are pretty important. I have to say they live up to the expectations, but definitely don't surpass it. For example, Slowpoke and Slowbro look pretty good in this game, though close enough you can see they're made of polygons. Electrode is one I had a problem with, since he's supposed to be perfectly rounded. Also, his eyebrows look really flat and pixelated. But generally the Pokemon looked really cool and like what I expected them to, as I've said for my Pokemon Stadium review. The sounds in this game are amazing. The environmental ambience is perfect for the scenic view, and the music is just at the right level to complement it but not overpower it. Also, the Pokemon in this game say their names, like in the show, but unlike most other games. This was an interesting choice, but I'm glad they went in that direction. It makes this game stand out just a bit more.
Wonderful!
Pokemon Snap was fun, but it definitely hasn't aged well. Its real weakness comes from its concept. I mean Pokemon photography, but as stupid as it sounds, it's also what makes it so unique and fun to play every once in a while, though since it severely lacks in replay value, you'll usually start a whole new game when you do. This was a good way to tide Pokemon fans over until Stadium for their 3D fix, which makes me kind of surprised there was never a Pokemon Snap 2. It would have been a clever way to tease fans with some second generation Pokemon and would sell well if they did that. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. The gameplay is good for what it is. You really get immersed in the environment, and it's all really well pulled off, even though there were less than half of the Pokemon at the time in this game. If you grew up with this game, then you know how nostalgic it can feel. But if you didn't, you'll either find it lame or like how unique it is. I give Pokemon Snap for the Nintendo 64 7 levels out of 10. I'm Leo Melanson, and I promise next time I talk about a Pokemon game, it'll be one of the actual main series games.